how is it going? I have this panel full of stars in here, and I'm so ready to start this conversation. Welcome to the third and final day of RevEx Fest, the Revenue Excellence Festival. And you heard me before, but here I go again. Today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, sales enablement, aka our modern sales pros. To create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. That's why we invited all those sales stars in here to answer your questions. If you're not a member yet, you're missing out, but we will invite you to join after this summit. And now let's jump onto our sponsors. This summit would not be possible without our amazing sponsors who you see on this slide. Big thanks to them for making RevEx Fest happen. To learn more about these innovative companies, click on the sponsors booth tab at the top of the event page. Also, while you're there, you can check out our jam-packed agenda by visiting the agenda tab at the top of the event page and see the full schedule of events. Now, here is our agenda for this session. I'll go over some housekeeping notes, um, and then I'm going to pass it to the speakers so they can start this conversation. As far as housekeeping notes go, familiarize yourself with Codecast, use the chat a lot, ask questions to the panelists. They love answering questions. So ask questions, network with people, connect with people, see everything that um,
Awesome. Thank you.
our sponsors prepared for you in the speakers booth, in the sponsors booth at the top of the page. Jim, are you ready? I think Jim had to step away for a little bit, so let's
Sorry
wait for
about
him.
that,
But
Eduardo. I had
oh,
a
nice. Are you here?
internet connection. You guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Jim, I'm gonna pass it to you so you can introduce yourself and the panelists and start this conversation. Is that good? I think Jim is having some issues. So let's start with some introductions in here. I'm gonna pass it to Eol. Eol, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, nice to meet everyone. My name is Eyal Orgil. I'm the CRO and a co-founder at DealHub. DealHub, for those who aren't familiar with us, we're a CPQ and contract management solution. CPQ means configure, price, quote. So basically, we help organizations put together quotes and proposals, get the right pricing and the approval processes, and then we can generate contracts with that as well. We also have a unique capability to share information both in a digital format, a regular format like Word, PDF, and also in a digital format, something we call a deal room. So you can have a really engaging experience with your customers when you're sharing content and proposals.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. Hey, James. Jim, are you good?
Yeah,
Can
sorry
you hear
about
us?
that, everybody. I'm
No worries.
having travel internet issues, but I think we're okay now. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Awesome.
If you have any issues during the panel, just let me know and I'll jump right in
Absolutely.
back in here and help having the conversation moving. All right. So, Eol, thanks for your introduction. I'm gonna pass it to Jim so he can take this the panel
Sure.
over from me.
Great. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. We have an awesome panel here. I'm super excited to learn from these folks and their experiences. So, my name's Jim Murphy. I'm with Gainsight. I lead the our enterprise sales function, which is about three enterprise teams covering North America. I started out as a individual contributor here and kind of rose through the ranks for the last 8 years and seen several different stages. So, looking forward to sharing my stories, but really learning more from folks like Michael and IL and Jennifer. So maybe I'll hand it off to Michael, talk about himself a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So Mike Head, CRO at impact.com. We are a partnership automation platform. What that means is, we help businesses grow through referral partnerships. The company right now, last year we raised 150 million at a 1.5 billion dollar valuation. We have operations in over 10 different countries across the globe. And, my journey has been starting as employee number 10 as the second AE to now running the global sales organization. So excited to chat with y'all.
Hey, one thing too, we talked about what do you do when you're not being a CRO on the weekend?
So when I'm not being a CRO, you can find me in the mountains. Right now I'm in our Santa Barbara office, but I'm based right outside of Lake Tahoe. And so in the weekends, I'm either with my family, hiking and going through creeks, or snowboarding or mountain biking.
Awesome. Not a bad time of year in Tahoe ever. Really.
Yeah, nope.
That's awesome. Jennifer, How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. Lovely to be here. So my name is Jen Brannigan. I am the CRO at Pendo. I've been at Pendo for about 18 months. And for those folks who aren't familiar, Pendo builds software that helps make software better, whether that's software that your customers are using or software that your employees are using. We help owners of that software really understand usage and behavior and communicate in app to continuously improve and delight users with the experience they have with software. So it's been a really fun ride. We've doubled in size since I started 18 months ago. From an ARR perspective, we're just under 1,000 employees. And prior to Pendo, I was at LinkedIn for 10 years. So I got to see an incredible kind of rocket ship journey there as well, starting pre-IPO and watching it through Microsoft acquisition. I'm based in Chicago.
What do you do on the weekends? I know Chicago in the summer is awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's rapidly dwindling away, this nice weather that we were fortunate to have. So when I'm not CROing, in an ideal world, I would be playing tennis, running, hiking, doing all kinds of outdoorsy things when Chicago allows for it. That's the ideal. In reality, I am running my 3 children to all of their various activities most weekends.
Awesome. Cool. Hey, why don't I kick it off? And I'll talk a little bit about Gainsight a little bit more specifically if folks don't know who we are. But IL, first, what do you do on the weekends? But then you've got a great journey being a founder and leading sales through. How's being the leader role evolved over the years as you at Deal Hub?
Well, I think that the strangest thing is when I look back and I say, okay, they call me the CRO, but day one, it was probably like I was a product person, I was a QA person, I was sales, I was marketing, and I probably had like 6 or 7 different hats on my head. So from day one, it was just doing everything, starting off 3 people, then we were 6 people, and then growing that off. So it's definitely changed a lot as we've grown to a company, especially over the last 18 months, more than doubled. We're over 200 employees today, where it's now, I have more weight, 2 or 3 times the amount of people than what we started originally, and I'm managing on a day-to-day basis sort of thing. So it's probably a team of about 40, 50 people underneath me, from sales to SDRs to pre-sales people to that. So the roles really changed in terms of growing the sales team, educating the people, bringing the other departments on that are supporting the sales organization, making sure everybody's working together in sync, and making sure things are just moving forward all the time. You're always grow. There's no you asked about the weekend. I don't know if there's really sometimes a weekend, because it's like the weekend means I've finished one week and now I'm planning for the next week sort of thing. So sometimes the weekend sort of meld into another week and you wait for another holiday to come along, but definitely changed a lot in terms of just the scale of the operation, the number of people that are involved, bringing in new people, getting the new blood on board. I think in every week, there's new things that happen. So as much as I used to think, I'll have a couple hats that I can take off at one time, I think sometimes you take a hat away and then another hat comes on as you're growing and scaling through the process.
Yeah, I'd imagine kind of the experience I've seen here at Gainsight, and it's probably similar to you folks too, as you grew the company. We had to really evangelize to get people to understand why they even had a problem in customer success and renewing and driving adoption and growth. And we saw our CROs very similar. It's one very tactical. They had to determine, hey, is there a repeatable sales process, and how do we scale this? And then our next leader came in and really started thinking about enablement and org structure and operationalizing. And then our third leader really did advanced sales and methodologies. And now we're at a scaling now. So we've had our 4th leader. I'm curious, Michael, you and I have had similar kind of tracks as individual contributor up to leader. How have things maybe changed in your org as far as evolution?
Sure. Yeah. As you can imagine, a big change from, employee number 10 to over 1,000 employees. The way I look at it is there were, 3 phases: creating, building, and scaling. Right. In the beginning, we had to create everything. We had to figure out what our sales pitch was. We had to roll up our sleeves. We had to fine tune it. we got, we lost a lot, and we just had to continue to iterate to get a couple of those first wins. And after we got the foundation, then we really thought about building the different departments, right? So we built the sales engineering, we built RevOps, and we started to be able to create the leverage to be able to get into that scaling mode. And then especially over, the last 2 years, that's where it's been global scale, right? So how can we scale into different countries, different segments, and continue where we had already been successful in the past, just making sure that we're adding on top so that we can continue those revenue growth, to hit those revenue growth numbers.
That's awesome. I remember those days. You just didn't know what you didn't know, right? You just had to keep iterating. Exactly. And I was really good at PowerPoint then, and now as you scale, you've got teams of people doing everything. So it's those were good times. Jennifer, I'm curious, or Jen, I'm curious. You guys doubled in size in your time at Pendo in the last 18 months. What lessons maybe did you learn from what you saw at LinkedIn that you applied or to Pendo, and maybe how are those two different kind of scaling experiences different?
Yeah. So, one thing that was really fascinating to me, especially when you're in hyper growth and trying to, consistently grow at a really accelerated rate year over year, that we don't think about all the time in your role as chief revenue officer, is the importance of being a recruiter. And, I would laugh sometimes. I'm like, I feel like I'm chief recruiting officer versus chief revenue officer. It's just consistently being ahead of your hiring goals, because it's so critical to have that quota on the street and be thinking through where you're recruiting in different markets and how you're thinking about your segmentation, how you're getting the right people on the bus to help fuel your growth. And so, a big lesson for me that I learned from LinkedIn is the importance of always being ahead of talent, always having a pipeline, thinking about your talent funnel the same way you think about your sales funnel, because your people are really everything. And then as you're bringing all these new people in, it's about consistency of sales process, and it's about having really, really tight enablement. And so, big learning experience for me coming to Pendo in particular is not having the infrastructure in place around enablement can really, really make a difference in your rep ramp time. And so getting ahead of that and consistently thinking through your enablement, fine tuning it, learning from market dynamic, learning from what's working from a narrative perspective, from a methodology perspective. And your organization is evolving as you scale as well. And especially, it sounds like everybody's kind of has been in this like evangelical sale. You've got to like really build the business case and the why. And as your market evolves, your narratives has to evolve as well. And so, the recruiting piece and the enablement piece were just absolutely mission critical for us as we've scaled.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because the reps you have when you start up are not the same probably profile of reps as when you're at scale or near scale. Have you noticed, maybe if anybody wants to take this, how has your rep profile evolved as you've scaled the organization? Does anyone want to take that one?
I think if I talk about that, we're still in a much earlier stage than maybe Michael and Jen. But what I found is, as we start to grow, first of all, we go up market. So I've got a different mindset of the salesperson that needs to do that. It's not a sales process that we literally will have sales processes that last a week and those that last a month. And then all of a sudden we're getting into those that are lasting 6 months and 9 months. It's a completely different mindset of that salesperson. How strategic are they? How do they go into those opportunities and really work them and find out when you get a no, they keep banging at the door. The one that's doing that 1 week sales cycle, as soon as they get a no, they want to go on to the next one. They're not that same profile. So definitely a lot of changes as we went more and have gone more up market. I need those more strategic thinkers and all that. And I've also had to divide the teams then into those where people have their strengths. You're always looking, as Jen mentioned, constantly looking for new talent, but you also want to use the talent that you want as well. And people have strengths where they have different areas and you want to move them around. Obviously worry about that as well, because some people say, hey, I'm an enterprise rep, but no, you're not really an enterprise rep. You're more a mid-market rep from what I see. But so you got to deal with sort of those emotional things as well. But you got to start putting people in the right brackets and all that and put them where their strengths are. They've been with you, you've spent time with them, you've been giving them the enablement. Let's put them in the right places. So, you're thinking about that all the time as well. What are the right people? And again, I'm talking a team, it's maybe just over a dozen people. So I'm not talking hundreds of people, but and then I have to set that as the groundwork for when I grow, because each of those teams are going to be several dozen as we move forward. And what's the basis and who's going to train the next one, and, getting the buddy system going and all that while we're doing enablement. So it's really been interesting. And it's happened, actually, I found really in the last 18 months. So it's been really, as soon as you start to grow and you say, okay, things are going well, all of a sudden these thoughts come in and all of a sudden we have to start breaking this out. So it's constantly changing that and rethinking the process. And that's been strange, but great and interesting at the same time.
Yeah. The people, the systems, and the processes that got you here today are not going to be the ones that get you down the road. So you have to constantly evolve. I mean, to that point, Jen brought up enablement. We've had enablement, and it's evolved quite a bit. And now we just have a really have a juggernaut enablement team, and it's really made a huge impact in ramping, and folks and reps are really engaged, throughout their life cycle here. I'm curious. So enablement's huge. So I'm wondering what other important projects or priorities should folks think about tackling at the pre-public level? Um, Michael, maybe I'll ask that of you, since you've gotten to the pinnacle from the start. Maybe start off with you and go around the horn.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk about some of the projects for the pre-public level. One of them is the forecasting. Forecasting has to be absolutely dialed in, and the right processes and data inputs to be able to get that right. You do not want to be at a point where you are missing your forecast. The other important things for us that we're focused on is that we're really looking at capital efficiency and efficient growth overall, which has shifted from years in the past. And so with that, our product-led growth initiatives and being able to truly scale those initiatives are very important for us as we're looking at the public IPO horizon. And then two other things that we're focused on that I'll touch on briefly. One is that global scale. We have 6 new countries that we've entered in over the last 2 years, and making sure that we can be successful in those markets. And then in our most mature markets, it's cross-selling. It's proving the land and expand and being able to drive your NDR are absolutely critical projects for us.
That's awesome. Jen, you mentioned bringing on enablement. Are there any other kind of key initiatives that you're focused on right now as you jumped in?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, just kind of throw out one big bucket or category, which is you need to have a super, super tight, well-oiled RevOps machine. And that ties into what Mike said around forecasting and predictability and being really data-driven and understanding your kind of funnel math. I would say kind of earlier stages, both at LinkedIn and at Pendo, it was a little bit more art than science in the forecast. And we're bringing a lot more science now. And thankfully, this is one of the things that happens as you scale, you have more data. And as you have more data, you do have more predictability, and you can use AI and machine learning to really help predict how you're forecast. And of course, there's always the art. That's why we'll always have jobs, right? But it's really important that you get tight there. And, I was kind of laughing. I'm like, this question is like all the sexy stuff, like data hygiene, making sure that you're like cleaning up your tech debt in Salesforce. Like, this is a massive undertaking that we're going through right now. We uncovered 360 plus fields in Salesforce that have just been built up over the years that we don't use and don't need. And it's just inefficient, and it creates really messy data. So we're going through a lot of work right now to clean up our data, clean up our historical reporting so that our future reporting is accurate, so that we can have accurate reads on like, what does a customer mean? Like the definition of a customer, like that alone is something that's really important that underpins your core business metrics. And so we're spending a lot of time just on governance, data hygiene, systems cleanup, and then forecasting predictability, and kind of all of that sits under the umbrella of our RevOps org.
So you have bad Salesforce data too, huh? I thought we were the only ones.
Oh, no. Not you too.
It's amazing with the data you have in your CRM, and I've seen it even when we're just a couple of years old. All of a sudden, we're finding fields. You said 600 fields. All of a sudden, you're only a few years old, and you're finding that you've got, where did these fields come from? And I've been in companies where we have like 6 different fields for country and all that. So we're not quite that bad. We try to control that. All of a sudden, why do we create that field? What's that data actually give us? And how do you read the data? I look at it in terms of, so we've got data, but what does it mean? Can you actually interpret it? What were we thinking when we thought that? And, that's gone. And sometimes as you're growing from month to month, it's like, no, we don't need that data anymore. We need something else. So even going back and trying to clean the data, what were we thinking? What did we want to get out of it? So it's been really, some of the things you said, Jen, and also Michael, it's really interesting on that. If you want to use that term again, data cleansing or understanding the data. I'm even trying to figure out with my own AI and my own brain what it is that we tried to do, and let alone giving it to some other tool to figure it out. So it's really interesting how that quickly becomes a monster, all the data that you have in your CRM.
Yeah, I kind of liken it because internally we have data in there from the day I started and people before, and contacts at the old accounts and everything, and it's like getting older and gaining weight, and I'm healthy, so I can tell this joke. It's like I tell the folks, like, we can't just clean it in a day. You can't lose 100 pounds. If you gain 100 pounds over 8 years, you can't lose 100 pounds in a week. It just takes so much time to get that cleaned up. But yeah, I totally appreciate that. So we're talking about forecasting and metrics, and being this is a sales nerds RevEx Fest. I'm curious, at what point or what inflection point do you really start becoming more metric driven? Because I know here we're just scrounging for deals, right, and just trying to get and just clawing to hit the number and hit the forecast. To Michael's point, every quarter, every month. At what point do you think there's an inflection point where I think you're always probably using metrics, but when you become more metric driven than just survival mode? Anyone have a story around that?
I mean, I can mention. So I don't remember like the exact time where like the scale was enough for us to like truly manage the business via data. Probably somewhere in the like 25 million plus range, because before that, right, it's just really about going deep with all of your deals and making sure that like you're prepared, you're executing the pitch, you've refined it. To now, after 25 million, it's starting to be more of a repeatable process. And once you start to implement a lot of the data, and a lot of that was just the very standard things that anyone can find, on LinkedIn or wherever it may be around your standard sales metrics. But what I've really loved about the evolution of data, there are so many things that we didn't have back when we were starting. Like the gong metrics, we geek out on metrics, right? The talk ratios, the question patterns, the longest monologue, like all those things for deal coaching metrics have been instrumental for how we can truly manage a global sales team at scale.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Nick, our CEO, he listens to like 4 or 5 calls a day, and just awesome technology. But the data in there, we had an interesting one in August, because economic headwinds. We would track certain words and tag words, like as the economy slowing down, and 39% of our calls in August had negative connotations around the economy. And good thing in September it was 19%. Now I don't know if we did less meetings or what, but anyways, it's kind of a interesting point. Just all the different data that Michael, great point, that's accessible to us. Just how do you use it? Interesting. Another question around the metrics side. What, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, Michael, like what metrics are important now versus earlier? So now we think about rep participation. Linearity is huge as you get closer and closer to IPO. Jennifer, just jumping in, being an at-scale company at LinkedIn, and then coming to Pendo. What are some of the metrics that maybe weren't being tracked, and now you've come in or have become more important? Do you have any stories around that?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely echo you around rep participation and rep productivity, particularly on ramps, but just in general as well, because those are not only critical to business performance, but leading indicators for longer term success as it relates to retention and talent retention. So that's been incredibly important to us. Right now, really thinking about GRR and NRR, particularly as we are in a more difficult macro economy. And I know we're all like laser focused on retaining our install base and growing our install base when net new logo acquisition might be a little bit more challenging to us. We do continue to focus on our sales cycle and how we can tighten that up. That's incredibly important to us as well, particularly as we try to create a down market flywheel. PLG, really thinking through our kind of sales efficiency and how we are using our own products to drive that. These are metrics that we've kind of evolved into. I would say earlier days, it was all about hitting your quota, like how we are doing against plan. But now I think, as you scale and as you have more data and as you understand the nuances of your business, you start to think a little bit more, I would say, leading indicator versus lagging indicator. You start to think about the evolving metrics that are going to be important, especially as, folks like us think about, going public one day, which is, all about sales efficiency.
I'm interested, as you mentioned, maybe a little bit earlier stage than some of the other folks. What metrics are you looking at with your sales folks?
I think what Jen just laughed about is where we're still at a lot of times is getting that quota sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's, do we have enough leads? So is marketing doing what they need to do? Where are they focusing? Top of funnel, bottom, middle of funnel? The SDRs doing their work? Are they, whether it's follow on from leads that marketing are providing, or whether they have to go out and do their own outbounds? How are the salespeople doing? So that's on the day to day in terms of the teams. Obviously, as a company that's growing and looking to grow fast, and actually, even with the downturns and the headwind and all that, the economic downturn, we haven't felt it too much. I haven't gone and looked at the gong. I want to go listen maybe on the gong and see if that's a good analytic to look at in terms of what people have been saying. But obviously, looking into 2023, we have a lot of plans to still continue grow. Now it's starting to analyze those at this point of the year. What are those metrics? How do they look? And holy cow, we've got to go like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more, whatever it is, we've got to have more. So now how do you scale that? So we've been fighting on the day-to-day of getting the quota. Now we got, okay, take all that. That's great. Now double it, triple it, whatever it needs to get to. So we're definitely starting to look at those things a lot closer now as we're getting in towards 2023. But we're still, I think, at the size where we still have to make sure those are the metrics that we have in place as we put our processes in place. And I guess later on we'll adopt some of the more advanced metrics. But on my day-to-day, it's still really making sure everybody's on top of their game and we've got everything working well to where we want to get to at the moment.
That's great. Michael, you'd mentioned, sales efficiency, and Jen brought up PLG. There's an efficient way to grow. And I'm sure you're thinking about this, but sales is a team sport, right? So anybody, Michael, maybe you could kick us off, but how does sales work with marketing and product and customer success to drive sales and to drive growth? Do you have any tips and tricks from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, they have to be fantastic partners. Like, sales is a team sport, and we talk about you never win or lose alone. And so we have an incredibly strong partnership with marketing. They help us throughout the entire funnel, right? So whether we're doing demand gen or we're doing, very focused account-based marketing and sales, we're aligned with the messaging and positioning, and our BDRs and our marketing team are completely in sync. But then as we move through the funnel, they're assisting us with additional touch points. They're also helping us with customizing presentations and making sure the messaging and positioning is on point. And we do something very similar with product as well. Product, probably one of the most important things is that we stay in sync on the voice of customer, right? And we're giving them the feedback and everything that they're hearing. Vice versa, they come in and they just nail a lot of our enterprise presentations. And it's amazing for prospects to be able to hear, not from the sales team, but from the product team, right? It's just, it resonates so much stronger. And so that's how we think about it. And then, as Jen mentioned, that, existing customers, our success team is so important for our NDR, our GDR metrics. They're all about adoption. And so the partnership with success and sales to be able to win new logos, but also make sure that we are growing our existing customer base is very important.
That's awesome points. Yeah, Jen.
I just want to double down on that. I think one thing that really resonated with me that Mike just said is have your product teams in front of customers as much as humanly possible. We do a great job of it at Pendo because our buyer persona is often product. And so it works very naturally. And it was something that in other roles that I've had, it felt a little bit more like a gap. But when your product team can hear real time from your customers about their needs and their experience with the product, and then your customers can hear real time from product about what they're building, like magic just happens. And so I think that's absolutely critical. And then one other one just around CS that we have found is so incredibly important is not just having, sales, sell, and then CS ensure implementation and utilization. It's so critical that value delivery and value realization as it relates to the customer's business outcomes pre-sale is so, so important. And so both systematically as well as from a partnership and relationship perspective, you need to make sure that end-to-end cycle is there around why did this customer buy? Not just, oh, they bought, now I need to implement them, but really deeply understanding the why did this customer buy so that when I am supporting them through implementation, onboarding, value realization, it is tied to the business outcomes they were looking for from the beginning.
Absolutely. And we've got, that's one thing that we definitely preach to our market and our customers too. It's customer success, product, and sales all need to be, and marketing need to all be kind of working together, driving those key outcomes, for your customers, and have that infinite loop, so to speak, as we achieve one outcome, document it, and let's go back to and start again and drive more outcomes within the business. So to make that successful, Amanda in the audience was asking about, should everyone be speaking the same language? I know as Gainsight evolved, we had our own silos, even though we were preaching in the market that everyone needed to be, sometimes we don't do what we preach, but as we've evolved, we've definitely really focused on that. How do you, Mike, IL, maybe in the smaller organization as you're getting ready to grow, do you guys have a common language across the organization? I'd be curious from Michael and Jen too, afterwards, how you've kind of seen that evolve, or if it's something you're constantly working on, kind of that language across the organization.
Well, first of all, we try to keep the communication open between the different teams. We're in a very open space, in a couple different floors, but we're open space. So we really promote people talking to each other, sharing information, taking what you learn, going back. So sales is going back to SDRs and telling them, what's working, what's not working. We're going to marketing. We're talking, like the others have mentioned, to product as well. So keep that communication open, keep it really flat. Unfortunately, you do get silos as you grow. It was always the strangest thing for me. We, 20, 30 people, there was no silos because everybody overheard everybody's conversation and sitting in a big hall together. And all of a sudden you started getting silos, and all that did was a divider that you put between people. And all of a sudden you got silos, and it's really important to break that down. So those, hallway or over the barrier conversations and all that, make sure people promote that. Talk to the different teams, whether we do it at our management teams where everybody's sharing what's going on and we go around the table and everybody spends the time. And these meetings can go long because we want everybody to know what's going on. We're presenting to other teams as well, having the salespeople go talk to the customer success or the product team, individually promoting that, have them have that direct contact, not going through management structure and all that, so they can get the voice of that salesperson or that SDR and really making sure everybody's aware of what's going on. So you find that you talk to somebody, they've already heard it from somebody else, which is great because there should be no secrets. It's a matter of, we're here for the customer. We want to give them the best service that we can. And whatever angle it came from, that's good. Let's all everybody contribute to that and make sure that we're having, that's the important thing, to make sure you're addressing the customer's issues. Everybody's got to be on board, talking the same. In the end, it'll be the same language that we're talking to the customer, but we also have to understand each other and make sure that we know exactly what's happened. So it's just really keeping that communication open, that dialogue going within the organization, promoting it without any barriers. I think it's been the greatest thing that's helped to grow.
That's great. Jen or Michael, how do you guys tackle the common language?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in here, speaking from the larger organization side, and we're kind of, we're scattered across 6 offices and multiple functions and almost 1,000 people. And so we have to be more deliberate, as hallway conversations don't necessarily always kind of percolate out where you need them to go. And so when we introduced our revised, I'll say, our sales methodology kind of right after I got to Pendo, we recognized the importance that it wasn't just a sales effort, it was a company effort. And so we worked to certify across the organizations that we understood value drivers, customers' business outcomes. And we wanted to be at a point where if our CEO stopped anyone in the hall, they could give the 5-minute kind of value pitch about Pendo using the same words and the same language, so that our product leaders are thinking about that as they're building product. Our marketing leaders are thinking about that as they're crafting content and crafting messages, so that our CS team thinking about that when they are implementing software, and so that our sales team is using it when talking to customers. And so it also has to be very top down, and it needs to come from every level of the C-suite as well. When you're celebrating wins, when you're talking about strategy, you need to ensure that you're using that common vernacular.
Cool. That kind of melds into one of the questions. We're going through the same process, Jen. We're redoing our sales methodology, and over the evolution of Gainsight, we've probably done 2 or 3. Kyle asked, has anybody ever brought external sales training in around methodology? I know early days, a gentleman named Skip Miller, if people have heard of Skip Miller, ATL, BTL, and selling above and below the line. It was one methodology we used, and then as we've grown and scaled, we're working with folks at Force Management as well. And there's a spectrum of methodologies and consultants you can bring in on the pay scale. Anybody has anybody brought in consultants to implement a sales methodology, IL or Michael?
Well, we haven't yet, but it's definitely something that is top of mind, because as we grow and we start to see people are selling differently, some have come from companies that are more structured, and they've gone through different processes, and you want to get that one unified process that everybody's using that gets the success. So while we haven't done it yet, it's definitely something that's constantly on my mind. How do we get these people to start selling the right way, the best way, the same way, so they're all talking with the right value points, or we're logging everything right in the CRM, even keeping track of things. One person says one thing and they mean it's something different than someone else writes it down. And that's just the basics of it. But even at the larger scale, how are they going through that process? So definitely something top of mind, which has really only happened, as we started to scale the team. And it happened very quickly. You started getting 7, 8 salespeople. All of a sudden you start to realize, wait a second, we don't have a process in place. That's already the point. You don't have to be at 50 salespeople. So definitely top of mind. It's one of the to-do lists. Hopefully get to it very soon, but it's waiting in the list with a few other priorities too.
So I can talk a little bit. So we've used a lot of different methodologies throughout the year. We did selling through curiosity, which I really like. We pulled some things through from Sandler, but the most recent one was force management and their value framework and their value drivers. And, really the previous question about the common language across the org, from sales to onboarding to success to product, we have leveraged that over the last 2 years, and it's been very successful for us. Talking about the value drivers, the before scenarios, and really focusing on those positive business outcomes and making sure that the whole organization is oriented towards that has been something that we've done. And then I know a part of Kyle's question is around the psychology, right? And like the human and the emotional component. So I would say no, we haven't brought a trainer in there, but a plug for a book that is my favorite book, which is What Great Salespeople Do. And it talks about the science of storytelling. And we promote a lot internally to align that with our value framework.
What was the name of that book again and the author?
Yeah, What Great Salespeople Do by Ben Zoldan and someone else. So I apologize for not remembering the second author, but fantastic read.
Write that down, folks. Yeah, I'd suggest any Skip Miller's books as well. We're going through force management training as we speak. Love value drivers, love the mantra. If folks are familiar, and it's just a great playbook, especially when you're getting ready and if you're always hiring like Jen is, it's good to have that there. People have a playbook right when they walk in, and super helpful. Maybe as we're talking about bringing in consultants and things like that, Naveen had asked about outsourcing BDRs, so pipeline development. Anybody ever kind of played in that arena? I had in some really early stage folks and early stage opportunities, but I'm curious, has anybody gone that route on outsourcing BDRs or really any part of the sales cycle?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Ayal, go ahead. You're good.
No, I was going to say, as when we were starting off, obviously that was something you want to look at. How can you bring in people really quickly to do it? We decided not to go with it, and a couple of times we've sort of hinted maybe we should go back to it, and I think that's actually good that we didn't. I think there's a lot of value to having people in-house. It's not always appropriate for everybody to do that from a budgeting point of view or staffing point of view. But there's a lot of value in being able, like we talked about earlier, with the communication and sharing things and changing things and tweaking things very quickly. And I just find through an outsourced, we did it a little bit, but it was so structured, and it's just they go do their thing, and it's like you just can't keep track of it as much. I think especially when you're growing, you want people really close, as close as you can be. It's been hard enough through COVID times where we're not working in the same office, but at least we're all part of the same team, and all of a sudden doing that same sort of process with someone who's not there all the time. So we tried it a little bit, not too crazy about it, and I'm actually glad that we stuck with growing the internal team. It can be has its own challenges as well, but that was our experience at least.
Yeah, I know. When we think about our SDR teammates, we want them to stay with Gainsight, and we want them to just move up, and maybe it's a sales cycle, or maybe it's a sales role, or maybe we call it the jungle gym. Going from into different functions in the organization, and so we find a lot of value in that. And what a tough job, but it's a great learning ground, and I would love our SDR team for sure.
It really is. It's such a wonderful talent pool, and you do trade that off when you outsource. And then the other point I'll just quickly raise is the individual AE and SDR collaboration model that you build is so critical in the success of that function and for the success of the individual SDR. Because to your point, Jim, it's a hard job, but it's a hard job that is made better when you feel like part of a team. And so I do think that there's a real benefit there of having it in-house. Now we have outsourced in emerging markets where we just weren't ready to hire, or we were going out and attending events and we have an influx of leads, and we just need the help, and it's been fine, and it's been utilitarian for us. But I do think that talent pool and the relationship that you build by having it in-house is a real benefit.
It's funny. The AEs that have the most, the fattest pipeline and the most top of funnel opportunities are the ones that have the best relationship with their SDRs. It's a mentoring opportunity too. So couldn't be more supportive of that for sure. Ron in the audience, I don't know if anybody wants to take this question. At what stage have you experienced a transition from functional goals to an integrated go-to-market orientation? So I don't know if Ron's context is more how do we get expand our TAM and making sure we have the right SOM, that type of piece, or is it more around our metrics conversation? Kind of taking.
I think if I take. Maybe I'll take that one. I think as we've grown the company, we're getting to a stage now we start looking at a lot more the strategy around the go-to-market, where it is what his question was. You're going away from functional goals and going to more market. I think till now, it's been survive, get the sales team growing, get the SDR team growing, get everybody working, the CS team growing, and all that. So that was very functional. It's now how do you put that all together, make sure everybody's aligned in the same direction. That's why I look at it as go-to-market. How do I now make sure that everybody's, like we talked even other things, we're talking the same language and all that. So we've gotten to a point where several, whether 500 customers or so, growing team, over 200 employees. Now is the point, each of the teams have already passed, 15, 20, 30, 40 people. You're at a point now, you can't just be functional goals. You really got to look at how everybody's aligned together. And that's, we've seen that more in recent times, starting to look a lot more at our go-to-market orientation than just looking at the different groups and letting them grow on their own. Everybody, how are we working together? It's really been a key stage now that we're at.
Yeah, my general guidance on the when to do it would be as soon as reasonably possible. The reality is, like, we think about our go-to-market teams. There's marketing, there's our channel partnerships, there's our BDRs, there's our AEs. And the reality is it's multi-touch points with the modern sales process. And so you don't want to have siloed goals where people are fighting over credit. You want to have a go-to-market goal that everyone is working towards. And when you do that, that's what we found to be most effective for the organization.
Great points. I know we're coming up on time. I'm curious. I know folks are wondering. We all like to learn from each other, so I'm curious. There's lots of mistakes. We've all made mistakes. I can name a number of them, but any things that people should watch out for, mistakes that you've made and learned from that other folks might be able to learn from today. So things I'm thinking about here at Gainsight, it's like maybe prematurely going after enterprise when you're not necessarily ready, or sometimes we put folks in the wrong roles, they maybe weren't fit for, but we just thought, okay, that's just the next progression, like moving sales AEs to managers. The big one is the idea of the day kind of syndrome. If you guys read Dave Kellogg's blog, Losing Focus, right? So I don't know if Michael, what are some of the mistakes you guys made on the way since you were there from 10 to 1,000 employees? Any particular ones that stick out? Any big scars you got?
We made all of them. Promoting the wrong people, like not investing in RevOps and enablement early enough. But one thing I want to call out, and this is more on just like my development as a leader, I didn't invest in learning about decision-making frameworks and making better decisions. And personally, I think that led to me making some poor decisions early on because I wasn't eliminating my own biases based on my own personal experience. And so Shout out to the Knowledge Project, Shane Parrish, a fantastic podcast around mental models, decision-making frameworks, and has completely changed how I lead.
The Knowledge Project. I'll have to check that out. Awesome. IL, have you made any mistakes yet?
I think we try to you try to minimize as many mistakes by thinking, and maybe sometimes the mistake is going too slow in some areas, so you don't make the mistake. So being a little overly cautious. Obviously, the same things we've made some bad decisions in hiring people. I think as you go through what I always like to call sort of the Gen 1, it's the original 5 or 6 people. Then you went to the next generation, you got up to about 20 people. And then from there, it starts growing really fast. And all of a sudden, if you put the right people in place, one with the right, thinking of where they're going, are these people really dedicated to this company growing, or are they coming to a job that, hey, I want a 9-to-5 job sort of thing? We're not at that point yet. We haven't, reached that point yet where we can start thinking that way. And I don't think you should ever be at that point. But so I think a lot of times it's getting the right people on board or putting them in the right positions that they're going to help drive that forward, so you can continue that flow of the same drive that we had as an early generation team. How do you keep that going through the process and really put the right motivating people in place? So I think sometimes there we make some mistakes. You try to fix those again, try to put people back in the right positions where they're going to add value if it makes sense for them to be with you from their point of view as well. And that's, other than that, it's just try to avoid, if you can, take the right decisions. Again, maybe sometimes a little too slow, but try to avoid them as much as we can.
Awesome. Jen, how about you?
Yeah, you can probably skip me. I haven't made any. No, I'm just kidding.
Cool.
Had to add a little humor there. I made a lot. So some of them are similar thematically. I would say from a talent perspective, not being afraid to recognize that some of the people that got you from A to B aren't going to be the people that get you from B to C, and that's okay. It's probably not great for them or for the company. Go with your gut a lot more from a talent perspective. Like, I've had the spidey sense at times, but everything on paper felt right, and your spidey sense is usually right.
Yeah.
Another one for me is not being afraid to make mistakes, and that 80% fast is better than 100% extra slow. And so, failing fast and just making decisions, realizing you're never going to have perfect information because you just don't at this stage. And so, for me, I think that that's something, coming from a bigger company too, you're used to having all the data and all the resources and all the help and all the business cases. And sometimes you're just not going to have that. And so you just have to move quickly and fail fast.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, good. I think we've come up on time. I'm going to invite, I should have practiced this before. Oh, here's Eduardo. Let him in. Have Eduardo kind of wrap us up. Thank you guys very much. It's an honor to speaking with you guys and meeting you, and hopefully maybe continue the conversations down the road. And thanks to Modern Sales Pros for giving us the opportunity. I'll hand it off to Eduardo.
Thank you, Jim. You are an amazing moderator. I'm just going to throw one last question to Jennifer that came up in the chat, and I think it's really important. Jennifer, if you can answer it really quickly, what's your recommendation for women looking to grow in the sales roles in a male-dominated industry?
Ooh, that's always a good one. A, have confidence and know that you belong at the table. B, find a champion. And C, find a mentor. And mentors and champions are very different, and I think they're both equally important as a woman. A mentor is somebody who you can ask for guidance, who you can be vulnerable, who you can pose your hardest questions and tell them how you're feeling and get guidance and advice. And then a sponsor is somebody who's going to break through doors for you, who's going to champion and advocate for you in rooms where you're not there. And so having those people to support you is going to be incredibly helpful.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So awesome.
Jim, you are a fantastic moderator. Jennifer, Michael, and El, great knowledge here today. You are fantastic speakers too. I see in the audience really enjoyed the session. Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. Audience, stick around. Let me put my slides up here so you can see the next session. We're starting in 8 minutes. We have moving on up, going up market to the enterprise with these amazing speakers. Modern Sales Pros did it again. We have another panel coming up with a panel full of stars. So while the panelists and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that this recording will be available pretty soon in the MSP website. So check this out. It will be available later today, and you will receive a follow-up email with links for everything that you need to know. Thank you, guys. Panelists, we can go hang out backstage. There's a button down there saying leave stage. Thank you for